Hey guys, I am here reviewing Bricklink Designer Program Set 910035. This is the logging railway designed by Trace van Asseldonk. This was released in 2024, contains 2,731 regular pieces. It comes in a pretty big box. Did get some heavy water damage on the box, but luckily the pieces were fine. Before we get to the set, let's take a look at the instructions and extra pieces. So there are no printed instructions. There's just this sheet with instructions here. You can also just Google Logging Railway Bricklink Designer Program or BDP, and you can find the instructions. This is the set designer. Most of the Bricklink Designer Program sets are not so altered by Lego, unlike the Ideas sets, which are heavily altered by Lego. And we have the stickers. So there are only 4 stickers, 2 on the engine and 2 on the caboose. There are some extra pieces, not a whole lot. So we do have an orange piece puller. We do have an extra tree as it is, part of a tree. What I do like is we get an extra one of every chain. So it looks like we have 3 extra chains here. It's not an extra one of every chain, but 2, I think, of the long ones and 1 of the short one. So not a whole lot of extra pieces. I really like this bandana. This is probably my favorite, which we got with Ninjago some time ago. We also have a printed piece of the crown, which is stamped on the front of the engine. I guess it's the maker of the engine. So not a bad amount of extra pieces, low for the piece count. And then, of course, if we consider the extra pieces from the Lost City Bricklink Designer Program, it's easily a third of the extra pieces from Lost City. But Lost City had just an unbelievable amount of extra pieces. So a bit low on extra pieces, but not impossibly low. So we'll come back to the instructions later, which I think is sort of the highlight of this build, but let's first take a look at the minifigures. So we have what looks to be the train engineer, the driver, is this lady with bright orange hair. She's carrying a wrench and a smirk. It's a nice figure. I haven't seen it before. Then we have the guy with the bandana. I like the spiky hair. Again, one-sided print. So this is modern via this guy because this is a hoodie. Otherwise, you wouldn't probably be able to tell the age of the railway, or you would think that it's very old. Then we have this sort of adventure guy. He likewise has a lot of zippers, which would not be considered old-fashioned either. He's the last figure we get. He has some bit of hair coming only on the sides. Not quite sure why it doesn't print also hair on the back, at least in this case. But okay, he has a nice cowboy hat. He comes with the caboose part. Of course, that doesn't mean you have to do it that way. Next, let me make sure the train is on here properly. You can see that despite the brick-built nature of the rails, that the train does move along. It's not perfectly smooth, but it does move along, and there are some large gaps, which we'll see, but it does work. So first off, we have the engine in this kind of olive color. So again, that crown piece in the front, this is nice, a very old style engine. You can see as you spin the wheels, it does move. So the instructions note this is a 040, and this is which designates the wheels of the engine. And it also is one of the oldest trains. This is also supposed to be modeled on Oregon, according to the bricklink information. So these are all held together with magnets, which is quite nice. There's some logs here to throw into the engine. So this is not a coal burning stove, but a wood burning. There's also magnets on the front too, which is nice. So you can connect it end to end or in a circle. Overall, it's kind of simple but nice. What I really don't like are these white plates here and here. They're held on so that you can put it seems to be falling apart a bit, so that you can put these tiles on the front, but I really think the white doesn't look very good here. Okay, next we have this kind of generator. I'm not exactly sure what this is. I like the rails, although this was a very frustrating part of the build to get it linked like this. It took a while, especially the first time. This is held on with some chains, and it's not really built to come up, as you can see. It's sort of a disassembly build. What's interesting about this is the frog. It has a magenta frog on the inside. Pretty rare color for the frog, I think. And I'm not sure why. So I don't know the story behind this thing, but this is effectively how it fits without the wall panels. So it seems to be some kind of a generator. Then we have what I think is the most interesting, which are the logs themselves. This is a logging railroad, so you would expect logs. You can see this has a double turntable design. Because these are very long pieces of wood, it requires 8 wheels and 2 turntables to allow it to rotate through the tracks, which is very nice. Normally they probably wouldn't be connected. They would just be logs. This one will also not really be able to be put back together easily, because once you move some, it gets hard to put them together. But there are 34 links here, which comes to 204 of these 2x2 barrel pieces and 12 of the printed caps. That's a whole lot of these, and they are connected. There are 2 Technic pins in here, I think a 12 and a 16. So it holds together well, except for at the point where the 2 beams are not connected. So it's a whole lot of these pieces, which is nice if you want to use them for a ship, or because it looks nice on a logging railway. I would kind of want multiple of these, but at the same time, I understand why they only have 1 logging car, because it's a lot of pieces and a sort of boring part of the build. The caboose is probably the most interesting. So here we see it's called Planter and Children Logging Co. I really like these bars. This looks exactly like the cabooses that you see in the movies, and has some nice red railway stoplights, 2 doors. It looks really like you would imagine a caboose to look like. And then if we remove the roof, you can see that I'm not quite sure why they didn't make it square. Perhaps they were slanted windows, but this part of the build was also a little difficult, and I don't think looks so nice to have this strange angle. You can see there are some slope pieces on the inside as well to hold the angle, and then these windows fit inside this portion. So it does fit nice, but I don't know if it's worth it to put that small angle on the windows when you could have just built them straight. Of course, with the roof gone, these panels also become more fragile. So here you can see the tree pieces. So they're planting, as the name implies. And we have a chainsaw here. So a relatively good, albeit simple chainsaw. We have a wood burning stove, bit of a fire hazard on a wooden train, but it's okay. And then we have also some wood panels design here. These are the brick pieces laid all sideways, so a lot of sideways building here. It looks nice, but it also does make it a bit more fragile. And the way they designed this car, the steps are quite nice as well, but it was very fragile putting together. In fact, this entire set, as with much of the Bricklink designer program, is rather fragile. Totally. As you saw, some of it is falling apart even during the review, which I can accept. This one is not as fragile as Lost City, but of course it is very fragile, especially as we come to now the main part, the railway. So it's about 18 bags, sorry, and about 8 of them are the cars, and the others are the raised rail line. But of course, as you could probably imagine, the raised rail line is the majority of the pieces, and well, it's also the majority of the bags, but not by a great margin. And now coming back to the instructions, as I said before, these are a bit more like a standard Lego set, albeit a little more fragile, and in some ways better, some ways worse. This raised rail line is, of course, not like any Lego set. We don't see a lot of sideways pieces put in sideways, although it has been done since the 70s. It's rarely done in Lego into the small hand clips, into these small hand-sized clips to put tiles in sideways. Seems to be not an illegal technique, but not often used by Lego. And you can see there is a gap due to the outside being longer distance than the inside, and we have the same pieces on the front and the back, so we have these same poles as well. It is fragile. I will pick it up, so there is risk of it breaking, so I first want to show what it looks like down. You can see it looks very nice. It's a wonderful display piece, and I think this is much more intended to be a display piece. I think you could modify the train and other contents to work with the rest of Lego, and you could also put in a car with a motor to drive it. But I think it would be quite difficult to integrate this part of the rail line. Perhaps not impossible, or perhaps I just don't see it, but I think it would be rather difficult. Now, that being said, these instructions were only 197 pages long or so, which is very, very short. We have $100 sets with longer instructions. This set was released in 2004 with $210 price, which is a good piece to price ratio, actually. But This set also has the highest number of repetition I have ever seen in a Lego set, with a total of 57 for the railroad ties. You have to build 57 of them. And there are other ones. You build 26 of this side, 26 of the other side, which are identical. And then 4 on each side, so 8 extra for these sideways railroad ties, which do add to the strength. Actually, the clips on either side do add to the strength, but not immensely, and it still remains very fragile. So each section has two bendable pieces, here and up here, with none on the back side. So the back side is held on only by these clips. So I will try to get a closer view. Just keep in mind that there is quite a risk of it falling apart. So with the train off, it's a bit lighter weight, so I am able to hold it up, and you can see here the clips and the different routing. So you also have to build these ties in the middle. It does actually look better on camera than it looks in real life. So it looks a little better in the picture than it does in real life, I think. Not by a lot, but somewhat. And also building it, you realize where the weaknesses are. These black lines going between the vertical beams are barely connected on the long side, and they're pushed inward to the maximum on the other side. So I have, in picking it up, had some of these come out. So it's very lovely, but it's a little impractical. I think if you like the Northern Oregon logging history or something, this would be a beautiful display piece, but probably not for someone with a lot of Legos, because it really kind of sits by itself, even more so than most of the other bricklink designer programs. So as I said, the Lost City for me is going to be kind of like a Jedi temple. Harbor Master's office fits in quite nicely with the rest of the marina, albeit it is a little bit high class for the rest. And then of course the train station, I think those were all released with the same or around the same wave of bricklink designer program. That one fits in beautifully with town. So I think it's okay. And we get just a ton of pieces, especially those small clips. I mean, everything here is duplicated at least 20 times or so, with very few exceptions, like these small. There is a 1x3 tile. There's only 2 of these. There's only 4 of these 1 round tile plates. So with very few exceptions, you get a ton of pieces, and the piece to price ratio is good. Honestly, if I was to say to improve the set, of course this could be improved, but as a display piece and not really as a play toy, I don't think it's the weakest part of the set. I think the weakest parts of the set are some of the structure also in the rest of it, which again is not a big deal since this is more of a display piece. And the colors would be number 2, but number 1 would probably be the minifigures. So we have 2,700 pieces here and 3 minifigures. I would have preferred the minifigures to be more classic, because this is a logging railway with a very old engine, so it wouldn't be practical in modern times for fuel efficiency and power, etc. Maintenance as well would be astronomical. So I think the figures should have been more classic, and then to increase the play value. And again, I realize this, as I just said, this is not a play set, but to increase the play value, I think it could have included some robbers. So this guy seems to be wearing a mask to avoid the dust and fumes from the burning wood. perhaps. It's my guess. It doesn't look like a robber, and again, he's wearing a hoodie. It's a little too modern of a garb. So I think maybe some bad guys and some horses would have been quite nice. Of course, the horses would have a lot of difficulty trying to attack on a raised railway, but I think that would have added to the play value and the overall value a lot. So I think overall it is quite a nice idea and a good set. So just from that, I want to give it a 3 out of 5. It does have a lot of weaknesses, but all the Bricklink Designer Program sets do. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.